Well, good to see you, Scott.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Become highly recommended.
Well, I take that as a big compliment. I say to many people, my career is just doing whatever Neil Sahota tells me to do.
Yeah, I've gotten to know Neil. It's probably pretty good. But the question is, did you hypnotize him to recommend you?
He cannot confirm or deny the existence of hypnosis in our relationship at this point.
So, well, with that, why don't you briefly formally say who you are and who you are?
Sure. So my name is Scott Sandland. I am by training and career a hypnotherapist, clinical hypnotist in Newport Beach, and but as it applies to this, much more importantly, I think I'm the CEO of a company called Cyrano.ai, and we're an artificial empathy company that has built an artificial empathy engine that is designed to create an interface that improves the conversation between humans and humans and computers. So the ultimate vision of our company is to build a free AI therapist that goes on the phone of every teenager in America and doesn't data mine the kid. It just gives them free access to help. So that's the goal of the company. And right now we're doing all the commercial endeavors that refine models and fund that. So that's what I do and who I am in a nutshell.
So, when you were a kid, did this ever come into your mind about hypnosis? I remember as a kid seeing a hypnotist. What was the name of that guy on TV all the time? Kreskin.
Oh, sure. The amazing Kreskin. Yeah.
Kreskin and others I've seen. How did this evolve?
So it wasn't, I went to Loyola Marymount University, which is right next to you. So I went there with a degree in film production, actually. I wanted to be a filmmaker. And, but I was also on the water polo team there. And the long story short is I was in a really bad car accident where I ended up on pavement. And it turns out I'm one of those people that opiates don't work very well on. And so just out of necessity, in lots of pain, I went to a hypnotherapist, and a hypnotist hypnotized me, and it created more relief for me than opiates had or anything else. I tried acupuncture and I tried everything.
Sure.
And hypnosis worked. And I was a water polo player. All my friends were athletes. They all had chronic pain. And so I just started doing what the hypnotist was doing to me on my roommates and friends. And it started working probably better than it should have. And I kind of caught the bug. And I just really enjoyed helping people, and especially people in pain. And one thing led to another. And a few years later, I was a hypnotherapist seeing clients.
Yeah, there's a reason for everything. At least that's
Yeah.
I think. And so everybody these days has a why. Although I've talked to a couple of people recently, they said they do their what and then they figure out their why. But you kind of give me a little more when I what you just said. But tell me why you do what you do.
So, I mean, just inherently, I think, we're pack animals. We're social apes. We have something in us that wants those of us around us to be better, right? And we want people in our tribe to do well. And I think there's a conversation about how big everyone sees their tribe as, right? Especially now with everything that's going on, in America. Everyone's talking about the size of their tribe, whether that's with COVID and who you're quarantining with, or with all the sort of civil protests going on in America this week. It's the same thing. People were talking about, an us and who us is. And for me, I think us is pretty big. I see myself as being part of a pretty big team. And so I like helping us. And so I built out a private practice in Newport Beach and was seeing a lot of clients. And I really got into working with at-risk teens and adolescents and drug rehab centers. So especially drug rehab centers for and chemical dependency under 30 years old was really where I was getting a lot of work done. And I had a front row seat for teen suicide doubling. Teen suicide doubled in America over a 7-year period. Unless you're a 14 or 15-year girl, and 14 and 15-year-old girls, it tripled. And I watched this happen. I watched kids drop out of Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, and junior colleges. I watched kids get over-medicated and anxiety overwhelming them. I watched all these significant problems I saw in front of me every day. So I built out a clinic. I hired a bunch of practitioners of different mental health backgrounds, psychotherapists to life coaches and everywhere in between, and put it in front of a local high school and said, this is how we're going to do it. And we were still chasing. We were still, just picking up pieces and getting too little too late. And I was in the break room at my clinic having lunch with a couple of guys just on the staff. And one of them said, as we were talking about this problem, right, just this ocean of problems that we're seeing, one of the guys said, what's crazy is every time there's a school shooting, kids grab their phones because they believe their phones are superpowers. And you see that, with the civil unrest, when these people feel these asymmetric relationships with the police, they believe that their phone is more powerful than that cop's gun. And so we have these phones, right? And these things are amazingly powerful. And yes, there are problems with them. And yes, there's a lot of learning curves and cyberbullying and all that stuff. But I just see them as the opportunity to help these kids because they trust those and they have them. And that's how we scale helping people. And it's not about training more people. It's about getting it in the hands of meeting them where they are. So that's how we started the company.
Pretty amazing. I truly believe in life coaches and all of that. People want to belong. People want to belong. You talk about tribes, they want to belong. And I find it related to that. It's been decades for us to get to the point where people, including leaders of companies and their brands,
Sure.
Realizing that it's a good idea to care about what's going on and to align themselves with social impact, which is kind of what you're doing. And that it's actually good for business. It's good to be able to attract the best people to come to you, et cetera, et cetera. So you've been involved in the worlds of hypnotherapy, now AI, empathy, which we need a lot more of. I'm kind of giving away the answer a little bit here, and it's a little bit of a push question because you're going to be talking about yourself so what do you think differentiates you as one of the leaders who care?
I think there's a lot of companies and not just in the tech and AI space, but there's companies that are built around or built on the premise of profit margins, right? Where they know they can,
Sure.
build a widget for $1 and sell it for $2. And that makes good business sense. But increasingly, I think there are more and more purpose-driven brands and companies that are. David Novak was the CEO of Taco Bell and Yum Brands for a number of years, and he wrote a book called "Taking People With You," which I think is a great book. There's just this idea of that whole good to great thing, and it's more fun. Maybe it's because I played a lot of team sports growing up, and I really like that idea of winning together versus winning alone. I think high-fiving yourself sort of sucks. And so if you're going to win, it'd be really fun to hold the trophy with somebody. And of course, what we can do for those people who can't do us any good. I think there's a lot about that, that just, you can't bring it with you. You at the end of the day, what's your purpose? The reason we're doing this is, what else are we supposed to do? Like, instead of just doing a thing where you're just looking at profit margins, it's not about running charities. And I don't really want to run a charity. I want to run a business that hunts for its own food and provides for itself and does things well and has good margins. And that can't be the reason we do this. Like that just seems like a really boring way to do things. David Novak wrote a book called Taking People With You that I think is a great philosophy. That is ultimately, like, I came from team sports. And I grew up playing team sports my whole life. I love sports. And when I was in private practice, I was alone. And it is a small business of one. Yeah. And so I would help a client and they would go to the elevator and I would have no one to high five. And you can't high five yourself. So you need to have a team. And it feels so much better when you succeed with others. And it feels so much more fun when you can share that with people. And I think we all inherently feel that way.
Yeah.
And so that's why I care, because it's just more fun to care.
Yeah, you're right. It is pretty crappy or hard high fiving yourself, I guess, like that.
Right.
But um, yeah, and as we said, we all want to belong.
Yeah, we do. And we want to be relevant. And, a lot of people will buy a nice car so that people can see that they're relevant and that they're doing good and doing well, which are two different things. Um, but it's just, there's so much fun to be had in helping people. And there's so much joy in making someone's day a little bit better. And we can absolutely build companies that are profit driven, that are paying attention to the bottom line. You don't have to choose. And seeing that becoming more and more prevalent, I think, is awesome.
Yeah, and it's become a big deal, rightly so. Finally, with everything going on in the world right now,
Right.
it's even a bigger deal, because we not to be religious, but we are here for a bigger purpose, basically, and so it's important. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love being on teams like this. And I've been really fortunate to have mentors and be a mentor over the course of my career to people who get that. And when you're in the presence of somebody who doesn't get that and they're just looking out for number one, it really poisons the entire well, right? Like all the relationships get impacted by that one person who's just trying to take and not share. So
Yeah, no, the team wins the championship usually. May have a star on it, but you still need the team, and the star actually makes the other people better in what
yeah,
they
I mean,
they do too. So, hey, I've been using a lot of my grandparents and parents' quotes these days. I'm not sure that's a good sign or not, probably a combination. But um, my grandparents always used to say, with a little bit of a Kiev Russia accent, "As long as you have your health, that's the most important thing."
right.
They would also add, and next to that is education,
Mm-hmm.
type of thing. So, as you know, technological change is zooming faster than ever. COVID's here, total impact from that.
Absolutely.
All the stuff going on now with racism on top of that, just when you thought you hit the climax of problems, bam. It's kind of given us time to think, right? Have a little bit of an awakening of what's important and how fast do we have to move and all that. So with all that said, and coming from hypnotherapy combined with technology, you're talking mind and technology at the same time. It's fascinating stuff. How do you view the future of work, of doing business, of engaging?
Well, so I see the two hats that I wear, with hypnotherapy and technology. Both of them are about effective communication, and I think communication is the most human thing, right? The thing that separates us from animals is not thumbs. It's effectively sharing ideas and passing on, like you just did, right? Like sharing your grandparents and parents' wisdom
Right.
to, like, that is like a profoundly human thing. And so I think we will continue to move more and more in that direction, where effective communication is, the defining technology on the planet. It was the printing press did that, and now cell phones and the internet do that. I think that's going to keep happening. My grandfather was a physician, and a very good one. He was a diagnostician, a smart guy. And the advice he always gave me, and I was not asking for advice, I was like 7, and I was sitting on the floor watching cartoons, or just TV, afternoon TV, sitting there. And if he walked into the room and saw me doing nothing, he would always give me the same advice. He would say, "What are you doing?" And I would say, I'm watching Knight Rider." And he would say, "Well, go make yourself useful." And he would go help your grandma, go help your mom, go help your dad, go help your sister, go help someone, go make yourself useful.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic advice.
Yeah.
Because go do what makes you happy sucks. Because if you're wrong, or you don't know what's going to make you happy, you don't know how to get started or anything like that, but go make yourself useful, you can immediately, that's actionable. I can go make myself useful to somebody. And so I think the future of work is figuring out ways to be useful. And rather than how can I make a living, more how can I contribute to the team? You know, not everyone is going to be the star. Some guys just play good defense,
Yeah.
and that's really important.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people watch the Michael Jordan thing,
Sure.
and a lot of people got a greater respect for Dennis Rodman's contributions
Absolutely.
without scoring any baskets.
Yeah.
So go make yourself useful is, I think, and people talk about universal basic income and Andrew Yang and any of that stuff, which I think is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
As we move more in that direction, everyone just asking what value can I provide is a great question.
You just made me think, because I would hear that a lot too. Go make yourself useful, and it wasn't in a derogatory way.
Right.
Now that I think about it, it was reflective on being entrepreneurial and doing good. Both of those are useful.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to go make yourself useful. That is, I mean, you know, my son's 4 years old, so make yourself useful sometimes is, you know, holding Legos that he wants me to hold while he's assembling stuff. You know, it doesn't mean important. It just means useful.
Yeah.
And that's that.
Well, useful probably is most of the time important, I would say.
Yeah, in a micro sense, important, right? Like in a macro sense, you know, in terms of history books 100 years from now, most of the most important things you'll ever do won't make it in a history book, but they'll be really important to the, you know, 14 people closest to you in your life. And if you're going to be important to them, that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, right on, man. So with respect to the well-being or health is the most important thing, a little more specific, how do you view, because I personally think it's going to be the business leaders who care that can have the biggest impact to change things going on, just because of the way we're structured. And what do you see the role business leaders who care will be playing in the sense of ensuring the financial well-being as well as the physical and mental well-being of their talent, and how it affects their business, and even more important, how it will go by osmosis into the community?
Well, I think we're going to have like an Earth is flat kind of moment with employment opportunity, you know, like with Twitter and Facebook and Google, you know, promoting more remote work. And everyone, I mean, as devastating as a lot of the COVID experience has been for a lot of people, I think out of it will come some good things, which is the realization that many of our jobs can be done from anywhere. And so that creates a more level playing field for a lot of people, which means that people are going to have to compete on more than just money. Because if you're going to have a Bay Area job that's been paying you, you know, $200,000 a year, but now you can live in Wisconsin and, you know, have a $40,000 house, all of a sudden there's a lot more options and opportunities. And so I think employers are going to have to be competing on quality of life, and employers are going to have to be competing on work-life balance and not, you know, 70-hour-a-week grinds. And so if we just start there, where we just start with employers saying, it is now table stakes to treat your employees well and not be grinding them for their salaries, I think it kind of starts there, and then that resonates out with not just corporate culture and opportunities to advance and continued education, but also just EQ. And we're talking to HR people and human capital management and all that, who are saying a priority in their company is how to more effectively manage their people so that the people want to stay, and so that the people feel accurately like there is a path up for them. And so I think those are the kinds of things that the leaders will do that will force the other companies to do it as well if they're going to get the same kind of talent.
Yeah, I think you're right. It became, not being able to attract the talent became a big hit, that they realized, man, we really do have to care because we're not going to get the talent. And now I think you're right, is that let's keep the talent, and it's important to keep them healthy, because it's going to affect our whole community. We talked about the league before. Every team in the league is important to and if we protect our whole community, it's a full circle benefit to, you know, to everybody. And so I think it's a brilliant play. How do you then are we going to be talking to, for example, have you seen the robot Moxie,
Yeah.
where it talks to kids?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you see all that playing into this?
So, I mean, really, I believe that we need every human to have a free AI therapist. I really think that's a great thing. And one of the main reasons I think that way is because, I've been in the room with, I don't know, 20 years worth of 20 clients a week, whatever that is, some giant number of people sat across from me. And that means that I know what it's like to have my ego be in the way and the problem. And I know that I'm distracted by my next client, my last client, or when is lunch, when someone's telling me something that is important to them. And it's just, I've heard it 1,000 times, and I'm doing my best to pay attention, but my best isn't always the best because I'm human.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can have a truly egoless, ever-present, patient listening tool that can just reflect back to people, this is what I'm hearing you say, and to do so without an agenda, I think that's awesome. And right now the problem is the digital interfaces we have, the Siri, Alexa, et cetera, are all optimized for giving correct answers, which is a very math-oriented way to try to handle the human condition. But if we can have tools that are optimized for effective communication and really helping people feel heard, then I think it's wonderful. In the same way that my 5th grade teacher said, you won't have a calculator in your pocket, so you need to learn division. I do have a calculator in my pocket. The same thing is going to happen with, I'm going to have a caring resource all the time. Now, that's not going to replace people, but it is going to augment them. And it's going to mean that disadvantaged people, or for whatever logistical or just socioeconomic, et cetera, reasons, they're not getting access to caring professionals with the right resources, it means that goes away. And so we reduce that barrier. That makes everyone feel a little bit safer and better.
Yeah, it's interesting because we talked about our mutual relationship with Stephen Ibaraki. He sits on our board with me, a nonprofit that has a workshop, a program called Nonflict. And Nonflict's an incredible conflict resolution program that is better than any other one I've seen because it's simple and it's brilliant and teaches people how to listen and to make sure you heard people. But they've now developed it on Alexa as a virtual coach, kind of like you're saying, and that can lead to a human coach. Yeah. But it's there to interact with you or to help you interact with someone else if you have a conflict with. And it certainly seems like we're heading down that direction big time.
Like I said, my son's 4 years old, and he is so comfortable talking to, we have a Google Assistant, and he is so comfortable asking it questions and playing the music he wants to play and all those things, that he really sees it as a part of his team. And we're only going to increase in that way.
Well, just don't let him fall in love with her like Scarlett Johansson in the movie Her.
Yeah. I mean, we will form meaningful relationships with our tech. I mean, people already fall in love with their cars, and those don't even have voices.
There's a point.
So I
hadn't quite thought of that, but people do name their cars even.
Yeah, they name their car, they talk to their cars, and those are, profoundly non-sentient. And so, these things can give the illusion, a pretty shallow version of sentience. But I realize that they are 2/3 of the definition of God. They are all-knowing, and they are all-present. And they are not all-powerful. That's the kind of the standard definition of God: all-knowing, all-present, and all-powerful. So you get all-knowing and all-present for $500 at Verizon. And that's saying something. And so if we can have a conversation with something that has 2/3 of the definition of God whenever we want, I mean, forget just Wikipedia. What if it also, the same way it had that facts, it also understood, oh, right now you're grieving. And because you're grieving, one thing that your psychographic profile tells me is that when you're grieving, what you don't want is to be told hopeful things. What you want is to just have someone appreciate that you're grieving and just say, I'm sorry you're feeling this way, or the opposite. And the system could give you that. I think we will count on that stability within the next 10 years. It will be invisible to us.
Well, that's probably a good way to complete. I'm sure Apple and Samsung will be thrilled that you elevated them to their product to that level. But that was like, I learned a lot, and I think everybody else learned a lot from your conversation. So I appreciate you joining us.
It's absolutely my pleasure. It really is.